Before sundown, Whit Carver would call Nell Bishop the wrong bride in front of every passenger at Split Rock Station. Before the board men left, his own cut brake leather would nearly send a coach over the grade. Nell did not know his name yet. She only knew the strap was tearing, the horses were running blind, and the coach was sliding toward empty air. If she stayed quiet, strangers would die before anyone learned who wanted the pass to fail. So Nell grabbed the feed shovel and threw herself toward the wheel. The driver hauled back, but the lever jumped loose in his hand. The coach lurched sideways toward the drop where the mountain fell away in a hard brown wall. Men inside cried out. A woman screamed. Nell did not wait for permission. She threw herself down into the dust as the coach slowed on a rut and jammed the shovel handle between the rear wheel and the stone lip. The handle cracked. The wheel bit. The whole coach groaned and stopped with one wheel hanging so close to the edge that dust poured down into empty air. For 3 breaths nobody moved. A mother inside the coach pulled a boy against her chest so hard he cried. One old miner stared at the torn strap and whispered, "That wasn't road wear." Then the driver climbed down on shaking knees and stared at Nell as if he had just noticed she was there at all. "Lady," he said, "you saved the coach." Nell's palms were scraped raw. Her bonnet had come loose, and her dark hair had pins sticking out like thorns. She looked down the grade at the torn brake leather, then up toward the relay station at the shoulder of the pass. "Somebody used poor leather on a hard grade," she said, "or somebody wanted it to fail." No one answered that. They walked the last bend into Split Rock Station with the horses led by hand. Nell kept her carpetbag close. Inside were 2 dresses, a tin comb, $3 sewn into the lining, and the letter saying Whit Carver had asked for a bride from Bishop County. She was 29 years old enough to know pity when it was coming. Lorna had begged Nell to go in her place for one day, just to explain. Clara Finch had promised the return receipt would protect Nell's fare and name. Now Clara stood in the yard holding that receipt like a locked door. Whit Carver was standing in the station yard when they arrived. He wore a dark coat too clean for the pass and gloves stained red at the fingertips with resin from the flag box. Behind him stood Clara Finch, round-faced and tight-mouthed, holding Nell's return receipt in her little black purse. Whit looked once at Nell's dusty skirt, once at her scratched hands, and his mouth twisted. "That is not Lorna Bishop," he said. The passengers turned. The driver stopped rubbing his hands. Clara lifted her chin. "No, that is Nell. There was confusion at the agency." "There was fraud," Whit said. "I asked for the pretty one with manners, not the cousin who climbs under wheels." The mother from the coach lowered her eyes. The miner who had whispered about the strap looked at Whit, then at Nell's bleeding hands and said nothing. That silence hurt worse than the insult. Heat went through Nell's face, not the kind that made a woman cry, the kind that made her stand straighter. "The cousin who climbs under wheels kept your stage from going over the grade," she said. Whit stepped close enough that she could smell bay rum and dust. "You are the wrong bride. You have no claim on my house, my name, or my pass." Clara put her on the down coach. Clara pressed the purse against her waist. "The down coach won't run until morning." "Then put her in the shed." A voice came from the station porch. "No." The man who spoke was tall and lean, with a scar pulling pale across his left cheek and disappearing into the dark beard along his jaw. He wore a faded brown coat, a black hat with a scorched brim, and a brass station badge that said HOLLIS Relay. His eyes were gray, steady, and not soft. Whit turned. "This is not your matter, Beck." "It became my matter when she saved my coach on my grade." Beck Hollis stepped off the porch. "Mrs. Keene, write her name on the day-wage board." An older woman in a blue apron looked out from the kitchen door. "For what work?" Beck's gaze moved to Nell's scraped hands, then to the torn brake strap the driver carried. "Pass work, warning flags, brake checks, anything she says she can do until the morning coach runs." Whit's smile thinned. "Put her name on that board, Beck, and every delay she causes belongs to your bond." "Then write that down too," Beck said. I prefer honest risk to hidden rot. Whit laughed. You're hiring a wrong bride. I'm paying a woman who can see danger before men with contracts see it. Beck looked at Nell then, not as if she were fine or pitiful, but as if she were useful in a way he respected. You can take wages for today, a meal in the kitchen and a cot by Mrs. Keene's room. Door stays open to the hall. No man here has a claim on you. When the route opens, you choose your coach. Nell felt every eye in the yard. Whit's anger, Clara's fear, the passengers' curiosity. Beck's offer stood in the middle of it like a post driven into hard ground. And if I say yes, she asked, then your name goes on the board before your shame does. Mrs. Keene took up the chalk. Name, she called. Nell swallowed, Nell Bishop. The chalk scratched, Nell Bishop pass hand. Whit's face changed. Not much, just enough for Nell to see the offer had cost Beck something. Splitrock Station was a long, low building, a barn, a flag mast, and a yard cut from the mountain. Above the roof, 3 boards hung from a crossbar, green for open, yellow for slow, red for hold. The locked flag box held the cloth signals and spare keys. Whit Carver wanted that route. Nell learned it before supper, while she washed dust from her hands at the pump. 2 board men rode in from the lower town. Whit met them near the hitch rail, speaking just loud enough for Beck to hear. A station master who brings in broken coaches cannot hold Splitrock, Whit said. One more delay and the board should pass the bond to a man with capital. One board man cleared his throat. If the noon coach misses the lower gate today, the bond can be called before supper. Whit smiled at Nell. Then we will all know what hiring the wrong bride cost him. One of the board men looked toward Beck's scar and away again. Hollis has kept this pass open 7 years. Hollis nearly burned with it once, Whit said. Some men never come back right. Beck was tightening a harness strap at the barn door. His hand paused, then kept working. Nell carried the water dipper back slowly. The scar on Beck's cheek made more sense now. So did the burned brim of his hat. Men had turned his survival into a weakness they could use. Clara found Nell by the kitchen steps. Don't settle yourself, you go down in the morning. With my return receipt. Clara's fingers tightened on the purse. The agency paid for Lorna's placement, not yours. There are fees. You said Whit was reasonable. I said what was needed to get you here. That was the betrayal laid bare. Not a misunderstanding, not confusion. Clara had needed a body in the stage seat so Lorna's name would not be marked runaway and the agency would not lose its fee. Nell looked at the purse. You took my fare. I protected the agency. No, you sold my embarrassment by the mile. Clara looked away first. That evening, Beck showed Nell the pass flags by lantern light, while Mrs. Keene shelled beans inside the open kitchen door. The pass wind carried grit from the grade. Green means open, Beck said. Yellow means slow team and check leather. Red means hold. No driver has leave to pass a red flag. Who has the key? Me, Mrs. Keene has the kitchen spare. The board has one sealed key for inspection. He touched the flag box with 2 fingers. Whit had one when he ran freight here 3 years ago. He was supposed to surrender it. Mrs. Keene stopped shelling beans. He swore he turned that in. Beck looked at the flag box. Whit swears many things after the damage is done. Nell remembered the red stain on Whit's gloves. Resin from the box, she asked. Beck looked at her. You notice much. Not enough to keep myself from being sent as the wrong bride. That was done to you, not by you. The words were plain. Nell had braced for comfort and found truth instead. Beck handed her the yellow flag by its wooden rod, careful not to crowd her hand. I owe you for today, he said. You wrote wages on the board. I meant more than wages. Then keep the pass open tomorrow, Nell said. I may need a coach. His mouth moved as if he almost smiled. Then we'll give you one. By morning, the whole station knew the threat. The noon coach had to leave on time and reach the lower relay before dusk, or Beck's bond could be called, and Whit Carver could make his bid. Nell woke beside Mrs. Keene's room with a clean bandage around her palms. The door had stayed open all night. No footsteps stopped outside it. No whisper turned her name into an invitation. She went to the yard and found Beck already checking harness. "Mrs. Keene said you don't sleep before noon, Coach," Nell said. "Not since the fire." He did not offer more, and she did not pry. Mrs. Keene told her only what mattered while they worked. 7 years ago Beck had ridden through smoke to turn 2 coaches back, saved 19 people, and lost his younger brother at the lower barn. As Nell crossed the yard, Whit's voice carried from the hitch rail. "A burned man sees smoke in every shadow." Beck heard it, so did the board men. Near 10 o'clock, Nell found a strip of brake leather behind the feed bin. It had been cut clean halfway through, then bent until it looked worn. Fresh pine resin marked one end. She carried it to Beck. His face hardened. "Where?" "Feed bin, hidden under oat sacks." Any man could have put it there. Any man with resin on his gloves and a reason to make your coach fail. The noon driver took one look and stepped back. "That cut matches yesterday's strap," he said. "If I had run with this, I'd have killed my team before the bend." Before Beck could answer, Clara came out of the office with her purse and Nell's carpetbag. "I found a freight wagon willing to take her down now," Clara said. "Cheaper than waiting for the coach." Nell looked at the wagon. No passengers, no driver she knew, just a mule team and a canvas cover. Beck's voice went flat. "She chooses." Clara smiled too quickly. "Of course. But if she stays past noon and the board calls this station failed, there may be no coach to choose." She lowered her voice. "No receipt, no witness, no claim. Below the pass, you will only be a woman who came where she was not wanted." Nell looked at the covered wagon and realized no passenger would hear her if she vanished from the story. That was the trap. Leave now in shame with no receipt and no witness, or stay and risk being blamed for whatever Whit had prepared. Nell took her carpetbag from Clara's hand and set it on the porch. "I saved one coach because I saw the leather," she said. "If another strap is cut, I want to see who benefits." Beck looked at her, then with a fear he did not show for himself. "Nell." It was the first time he had said her name softly. She felt the pull of it and made herself stand firm. "You gave me work, let me do it." At 11, the red flag was missing. The box was locked. Beck's key would not turn. Mrs. Keene brought her spare from the kitchen. It would not turn either. The driver of the noon coach cursed and spat dust. "If we don't roll in 15 minutes, the lower station closes the night gate." Whit stood by the board men, arms folded. A station that cannot open its own flag box is no station. Nell looked at the lock. New scratches shone around the plate. The wrong key had not broken it. A different key had turned something inside. Then she heard it, from the upper shelf, faint but growing, hooves. "That's not the noon coach," Beck said. "It's the inspection coach," one board man said. "Marshal's aboard." Whit's mouth tightened. The younger board man saw it and looked toward Whit's red-stained gloves. For the first time all morning, he stepped half a pace away from him. The inspection coach was coming down from the upper grade, the dangerous way, where a driver needed to see Splitrock's signal before the last bend. With the red flag locked away, the driver would see no warning at all. Nell grabbed the yellow cloth from the hook. "Yellow won't hold him," Beck said. "Then make red." She ran to the flour sacks stacked by the kitchen wall, tore one open, and dragged the white cloth through red dust by the wheel rut where iron oxide stained the ground. Mrs. Keene understood first. She seized the other end and helped Nell twist it to the yellow flag. "Mast rope's jammed," the driver shouted. Whit had thought of that too. The flag rope hung high, cut and knotted above reach. Nell looked to the signal spur, a narrow rock ledge 20 yards above the yard where old freight men once set storm lanterns. She had seen the path at dawn. Loose shale, thorn brush, a broken rail at the top. Dangerous but not impossible. Hold the lower team, she told Beck. I'm going with you. No, they need you on the grade. If that coach rounds blind, turn them toward the inside wall. For a moment they faced each other, the makeshift red cloth snapping between them. Beck's jaw worked. You don't owe this pass your life. I owe myself the truth. She ran before he could stop her. The climb tore her skirt and opened one scraped palm. Below, Beck mounted and rode hard toward the bend. Whit shouted for someone to pull Nell down, but nobody moved fast enough. Mrs. Keene stood at the foot of the spur with a stove poker in both hands, daring any man to try. Nell reached the old rail as the inspection coach came into view. 4 horses, driver leaning back, marshal beside him, passengers gripping the roof rail. The driver looked toward the station mast and saw nothing. Nell tied the red-dusted cloth to the broken rail and swung it with both arms. Hold, she screamed, hold the grade. Beck rode into the road below, hat off, arm raised. The lead team veered. The coach struck the inside bank instead of the outer drop, tilted hard, then slammed down in a cloud of dust. One trunk broke loose. A passenger fell to his knees, but the coach held. The yard went silent. Then the marshal stood in the coach box and looked up at Nell on the spur. Who gave that signal? Nell climbed down with the cloth in her bleeding hand. I did. Whit was already moving toward the flag box. A desperate woman making noise does not prove sabotage. No, Nell said, but your key will. He stopped. The marshal stepped down. He was a square man with a gray mustache and dust on his coat. What key? Nell pointed to Whit's gloves. The red stain is box resin. The flag lock was changed after Beck and Mrs. Keene used their keys yesterday. Whit Carver had the old freight key and never surrendered it. Whit laughed, a wrong bride trying to sound important. The words struck less hard this time. Nell had a yard full of people behind her and a coach still upright because she had acted. Then hand your keys to the marshal, she said. Whit did not move. Beck dismounted at Nell's side. Dust covered his coat, his horse trembled from the hard ride. Hand them over. You are finished, Hollis, Whit snapped. This delay proves it. No one touches my coat, Whit said. The driver answered loud enough for the yard. You were loud enough when you called her wrong. Be loud now and empty your pockets. The marshal held out his hand. Keys. Whit looked at the board men. Neither helped him. Slowly he pulled a ring from his coat. The third key was stained red at the teeth. The marshal put it in the flag box lock. It turned clean. The passengers moved back from Whit, as if the red stain on the key had spread to the ground around him. Mrs. Keene made a sound like a prayer. Inside the box lay the folded red flag, Beck's spare rope cut in 2, and a short knife with a notched tip. Nell stepped forward before Whit could speak. The brake strap from yesterday was cut halfway and bent to look worn, she said. The strap hidden by the feed bin has the same notched cut. That knife did both. The driver took the leather from Beck and held it up. She's right, that ain't wear, that's a man's hand. One of the passengers from the first coach pointed at Whit, and he wanted us back on the road before she checked it. Whit lunged for the key ring. Beck caught his wrist. Beck did not strike him. He simply held him until Whit went pale and the marshal took the keys and knife both. Whit Carver, the marshal said, your route bond is forfeit pending hearing. Your bid is struck until this office clears you. Until hearing, no Carver freight uses this grade under company seal. Whit looked toward the hired men by the barn. Both looked down. For the first time at Splitrock, no one moved when he expected obedience. The bored man who had doubted Beck removed a folded paper from his vest. Splitrock remains under Holly's relay. Whit's face twisted toward Nell. She is still the wrong bride. Nell met his eyes. Yes, and that is the first true thing you have said. A laugh broke from the driver, then another from the passengers, not cruel laughter at Nell this time. Laughter that stripped Whit's words of power. Clara tried to slip toward the office. Mrs. Keene blocked the door. Purse, Mrs. Finch. Clara went white. The marshal turned. "What is in the purse?" Nell answered, "My return receipt and the fare," she said, "belonged to the agency." Clara's mouth trembled. "I was protecting placement fees." "You were protecting yourself," Nell said. The marshal made Clara open the purse on the station desk. The receipt lay inside, folded with Nell's name written in Clara's own hand. Beneath it were the coins Nell had paid for the return clause. The board men watched Clara sign a repayment note and a complaint against the agency office. Her standing did not fall with a shout. It fell with ink, witness names, and the sound of Nell's coins counted back into her palm. By late afternoon, Splitrock looked like a station again. The mast rope had been replaced. The red flag lay folded where it belonged. The green flag waited on the hook. The board men did not leave at once. Beck walked the grade with them, the driver, the marshal, and Nell. He put the torn brake leather in Nell's hand and let her show where the wheel had jumped, where the shovel handle had splintered, and where a driver would lose sight of the mast. "The warning must be higher," Nell said. One board man frowned. "That spur is old freight ground." "Then use it again. A red flag on the yard mast is too late for a coach already committed to the shelf. Put a second rope above the bend. If Splitrock's spur shows red, the driver holds before the worst turn." Whit, seated under the marshal's eye, gave a bitter laugh. "Now the wrong bride runs the board." The marshal tapped the key ring against his palm. "The wrong bride kept your passengers breathing." Nobody laughed with Whit. That silence mattered to Nell more than she expected. In the morning, silence had helped shame her. Men had watched Whit name her wrong and waited to see who would pay for her. Now silence turned the other way. It made room for her words. The older board man removed his hat. "Miss Bishop, would you mark the new spur signal on the route sketch?" He held out a pencil. Nell looked at Beck. He did not nod as if granting permission. He simply stepped aside so the board man had to face her fully. Nell took the pencil and marked the spur with a clean X, put the rope here. "And store brake leather in the office, not behind feed. Every driver signs after checking it." "Write that too," Beck said. So she did. By the time they returned to the yard, the passengers had gathered near the porch. One woman whose boy had been in the inspection coach came forward with a small ribbon from her hat. "For the flag," she said, and tied the ribbon around the new rope. "So drivers remember who told them to look up." Mrs. Keene saved her. "You say thank you, then you eat. Pass keepers cannot run on dust." Beck stood at the route board with chalk in his hand. For the first time all day, he seemed unsure. "Mrs. Keene says the pass needs a keeper who reads signs before the rest of us admit there are signs," he said. Nell looked at the board. Under HOLLIS relay, where her morning wages had been written, Beck had wiped a clean space. "Is this a kindness?" she asked. "No," he held out the chalk. "It's a job. $7 a week, meals caught as long as you want it, and your fare stays yours. If you take the coach, the job waits 1 week. If you stay, the job starts now." That was the difference between rescue and respect. Respect handed her the chalk. Nell wrote carefully, "Nell Bishop, pass keeper." The letters looked like a place in the world. The down coach rolled into the yard near dusk. Its driver called, "One seat open." Clara stood beside it with her valise, face small and closed. Whit sat under guard on the inspection coach, hat low, hands empty of keys. Neither of them looked at Nell. Beck did. He stood by the green flag, letting the choice remain visible. The open coach, the paid board, the pass road. He did not ask before the asking was fair. Nell touched the coins in her pocket. She could leave. That mattered. The driver waited. Nell picked up the green flag and tied it to the new rope. Hand over hand, she raised it above Splitrock. The cloth snapped in the wind, bright against the darkening pass. "Route open," she called. The driver grinned and climbed back up. The coach pulled out with its empty seat. Only after the wheels faded did Beck come to stand beside her. "Nell Bishop," he said, voice low enough that it belonged to her and not the yard. "I would like to call on you proper. Not because you were sent here. Because when trouble came down that grade, you ran toward the truth while men with titles waited for permission." The pass wind moved between them. Mrs. Keene pretended to adjust the porch lantern and smiled into the glass. Nell looked up at the green flag, then at her name on the board. "You may call on the pass keeper," she said, "but she keeps her own key." For the first time since she had met him, Beck Hollis smiled fully, scar and all. "I wouldn't trust the pass to you if you didn't." That night the lantern burned on the porch until the last echo of wheels disappeared from the grade. The shed door stood open and empty. Nell's carpetbag rested inside by Mrs. Keene's room, and the key to her own lock sat warm in her pocket. Above the yard, the green flag held steady in the pass wind. Below it in chalk every driver would read by morning, her name stayed white against the board. Nell Bishop, pass keeper.